Thank you everybody for coming to this budget hearing for the law department. We have with us this morning, I'm Counselor Rudd. There's Counselor Green, who is an at-large counselor, Counselor Thompson, who's another at-large counselor, and 5th District Counselor and birthday boy Joe Driscoll.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Dr. Shane. No way I'd rather spend it.
Yeah. Soft, yeah. Kristen, would you introduce yourself and anybody you've brought?
Sure. I'm Kristen Smith, the Corporation Counsel, and this is Joe Barry, our first Assistant Corporation Counsel.
Thank you. Would you like to take a moment just to talk a little bit about what you do?
Sure, sure.
The budget overall?
So, as you know, we're the city's lawyers. We provide legal advice and counsel to the mayor, to all the city departments, boards and agencies, and of course to you, the Common Council. So in terms of some of the specific things that we do, we prepare all the ordinances that come before you, which number around 1,000 each year, which is very impressive. We draft and review all contracts entered into by the city. We defend any lawsuits brought against the city, and we have a team of litigators who handle those matters. As a self-insured entity, we also serve somewhat as an insurance company, reviewing all claims that come before the city. We make decisions on those claims, we investigate and issue decisions. We, like I said, we support all the departments, but I'll mention just a few things in particular that take up a big part of our time. One is housing court. We support the codes enforcement area, bringing property owners to court when that becomes necessary and enforcing our ordinances. We work on collections. We have a team of folks who do collections. When we do obtain judgments against the city, we actively pursue those to collect those funds. We support the land bank in that we seize and convey property to the land bank. And we support labor relations, any type of labor arbitration or other type of proceeding in that realm. And those are sort of the major areas, but certainly we provide support in every area of the city. And I just add that we currently have 26 employees. At full staff, we would be 29, and we're getting close to being at that point.
We also serve as counsel to the Joint Schools Construction Board, which is a very active area.
Sorry for not mentioning that.
No problem.
That's Joe's baby, right?
Yes.
Yes. Any questions?
Welcome, Counselor Carney, joining us.
Welcome.
First District Counselor. If you have questions to
Go
start.
for it.
Hey, Kristen. Okay, so the first one, the work that you guys do to convey property to the land bank, we hear, or at least I hear a lot about it, that there's a backlog of properties the land bank hasn't gotten to yet. And I'm just curious what your guys' perspective is in terms of is the law department properly staffed in that area? Could you use more resources? And just kind of your overall opinion on whether or not we're doing what we can to get the properties to them.
There is a backlog, and that is an issue. But we are exploring some creative ways to address that this year. We're in talks getting some outside assistance with some of the backlog, and in a creative way that actually won't cost the city anything. And to answer your question, could we use more resources in that area? Sure. If you'd like to give us another attorney to do that, I'd welcome that readily.
I would just add, though, too, that part of the problem stems from the title work surrounding these properties. The property owners that are in trouble with their taxes typically are in trouble with a lot of other persons whom they owe money to, and as such, liens and other encumbrances on the property have to be sorted out before we can properly seize it.
Yeah, they're incredibly labor-intensive files. They're very complicated properties. So that's part of it. I mean, it's complicated work.
Can you maybe give us a little your thoughts on what the adjudication board, how this will impact your office, and whether or not in that regard, you said you're not up to full staffing yet, but whether or not that's a problem that will occur, problem.
For the municipal violations?
Yes.
Board? Sure. So that we're welcoming that this year for sure. Matters that typically would have all been referred to our lawyers in the law department, a number of them will now go to this board, which will allow our lawyers to focus on the more serious violations. You know, all the violations are important, but some are more serious, some have safety aspects to them. There is a backlog in that area right now, and we anticipate that with the assistance of this board that we will be able to better focus our resources to focus on the more serious violations and be able to bring them to court in a more timely fashion, which is, you know, better for the city, of course.
Sure, but this shows us that last year you did about 300 or so cases over in court, and we're speaking about from yesterday's conversation, and that we're speaking about a vast majority of ones headed over your way. Not the most serious, of course, but so does this, you know, obviously you'll have to restructure, you know, who's doing what. I don't know how much time this will take or anything, but.
Sure, I can comment a little bit more about that. Of the cases that are already referred to law, we're going to finish those through the process, and that's a very large number. So at least in fiscal year 18, our numbers in that area will not go down. Okay. In terms of staffing, we have 2 lawyers and 1 paralegal that focus on that, and even with the board, I anticipate there will be enough work for them in future years. And that's because instead of going, you know, working on cases that may have sat for a year, they'll be able to take the cases to court immediately, which is just a better way of enforcing, you know, of these issues. So I don't anticipate that we will have a decreased need for resources in that area. Another area where
Just
this
to clarify, you said fiscal year 18, but you mean fiscal year 19.
That's what I meant, yeah. Sorry about that. Another point that's worth noting is that we anticipate an increase in collections work because our hope is that through this board we'll, you know, obtain increased number of judgments against property owners. We currently have 2 individuals who work on that, and our plan in this coming year is to focus 1 additional person in that area so we can actually collect on the judgments that we obtain.
That's good. Thank you.
On that vein, the judgments collected, it was 414,000 the previous year, then the current year we're at like 277,000, and then we're projecting 450,000. So do you have any idea why it was so much lower in the current fiscal year compared to the previous year? And then is it related to the Municipal Violations Bureau for why we expect it to go up, or what's the reason we think it's going to go up so much? It's on page 122, the code enforcement.
Yep, I'm looking at that.
I can probably answer that question for you.
Thank you.
The projection for this year is a lot lower because we have, through January, we had collected a lot lower than we had in the previous year. The law department had some new computer software going back 2 years ago, and they were going to be able to attack cases a little more aggressively for collections because of the software, and I don't think they're up to 100% at this point to do that, but hopefully next year they will be, and we will see those increased in the housing fine collections.
And it's also tied to what I mentioned a moment earlier, that we're going to put more manpower on that as well.
So is this where we would expect to see an increase as a result of the Municipal Violations Bureau in the future, like in future years, or would it be somewhere else in the budget?
We're going to set up a separate account for that once
Okay,
it gets up and running, and hopefully the identification of when the person comes in to pay that, it will be from the Municipal Violations Bureau, because we want to track that separately.
I wanted to acknowledge Councilor Bay, at-large Councilor, and 4th District Councilor Allen, who also joined us.
You'd mentioned before that you know, we're self-insured, and you guys primarily deal with a lot of the claims and things of that nature. I guess it's a 2-part question. One, you know, what do you guys see coming down the pipeline as of concern, or if that's more of an executive session kind of question? We can save that for another time. And then the second would be, and I guess this is probably more finance than you guys, but do you see any benefit from moving away from being self-insured to seeking something else? Trying to get insured, and is that something that would be cost effective? Because I just the last few years I've been on the council, it seems like we've paid out an awful lot.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of what's coming down the line, it's hard to predict, what we will be sued for, and what what accidents and incidents will occur. So, and in terms of particular incidents, that would be an executive session discussion. In terms of self-insurance, that may be a question, for administration. I will say that I do think that over the next year, I'd like to work, with the Director of Administration, Christy Elliott, and look at this risk management function and really take a close look at whether we're managing the risk in the best way that we can for the city.
I saw on page 344 is outsourcing, and one of the numbers for outsourced cases was 335,000. Is it all the outsourced cases, or is it that?
So that's our use of outside counsel, yes. So that's our, and you'll notice that number goes down by 24%, and that's intentional. One of the things that I'm focusing on is building the skill sets and expertise and capacity of our internal lawyers, and I'm really putting a focus on professional development this year. We have an excellent team of lawyers, and I think a number of things that in the past we may have had to outsource for various reasons, I'm confident that we'll be able to do that in-house and reduce that number.
That is something that I know as the council has looked at over the years, to try and bring your department up to par so that they don't have to outsource as many. They would be able to litigate those that are there. Do you see then a necessity to increase on the pay end to make it competitive with the county and with the state? Or?
That's always a need. It's difficult. Our salary structure is such that the lawyers in our department get paid significantly less than other governmental agencies in the area, and certainly less than the private sector. And so that is, it creates a challenge to attract top talent.
To keep.
And to keep, absolutely.
So I had a question related to this, which is probably better to bring it up now because I think you kind of answered it. But when you look at the salary line, like the council department, it actually goes down. The engineering department, it's like zero. The codes department, it goes down a little bit. But your salary line actually goes up by like 2.5% for the year, but the head count's the same. So I was wondering, maybe just comment on that, and then maybe the FY18 projection is really low. So maybe compared to the budget, it seems really under. Maybe comment on how it's so much lower.
Sure, I can explain that. In terms of the low actual for this year coming to an end, it was a year of transition, and we had quite a few vacancies throughout the year, so we didn't spend a budget. In terms of the increase, it's a small step towards what I just discussed in terms of trying to do what we can within the existing structure to try to be more competitive.
So I'm on the SEDCO board separately.
Okay.
And I know one of the things we're talking about is outsourcing. So currently corporate counsel is the attorney for SEDCO, and we're talking about using outside counsel for that. So I'm curious, are there other entities that are quasi-city related that currently corporate counsel does work for that the law department would benefit from outsourcing, or if you think that working on that benefits the city? And I'm just kind of curious what your general take is on that.
I think that, in the short term, we work very hard. We have a lot of work, and so, if there's one area that we're not tasked with, that can be helpful. But I think from a broader perspective, it would be my preference to see us be able to have the resources within the Department of Law that we could serve everyone who wants us to serve them, you know, at a very high level. And I'd like that departments feel that they can get that service from us without having to outsource. Do you have anything to add?
I think over the years we have served these outside agencies well, in particular CIDA. With CIDA's the policy they started last year of not every pilot agreement going to the council, that has decreased our role somewhat. But on the other hand, when CIDA does other forms of financing, such as the JACB, we have to be involved. SEDCO is a little different in that it's more of a pure nonprofit agency using, I believe, small business loans. So if they have the funding to use outside counsel, and that's their preference, it would potentially free up one of our transactional lawyers to focus more on real estate and other related matters.
The other thing I would mention is just from a pure economic perspective. Outside lawyers cost more, so, I think in the end, the investment that you make in personnel within the Corporation Counsel's office pays back, in terms of saving those expenses of those expensive hourly rates.
Thanks.
Just curious, at 29 employees ideally, how to say it, do you feel adequately staffed? Do you guys feel you have room to breathe, or do you feel like you're always running to put out the next fire?
Well, I would note, as I think I mentioned to you in January, we started the year down 4 lawyers and a couple of paralegals, so it was very challenging.
Right.
However, with both Frank Price and now Kristen, we've been able to restaff. We have those 4 lawyer positions filled, and we're in the process of hiring paralegals. So I think we're much improved from where we were 3 months ago.
So you feel at 29 you'll be in a comfortable place?
No. I mean, we could always use more resources. The workload that we have, and I can compare it to, coming from a law firm. I mean, it's very heavy workload here. High caseload. There's always more for us to be due. There's always people, twice today we've talked about backlogs, and that's not because we don't have the expertise. It's because of capacity
so much coming
issues.
in. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
But it will, it will be interesting to see, how this year goes with a full staff of 29. But I do anticipate that there's still going to be areas that we could use someone else, particularly in the real estate area. We talked about the land bank. I mean, it's extremely complicated work. And
so I don't know if I missed this when you were discussing, but how many staff members do you feel like the MVB or the BAA, as it's whichever acronym you use, the municipal violations is going to free up on your staff? How much more extra capacity? None? Or
None.
None. So that won't affect you guys at all? Well, I mean, don't a lot of those cases currently come to you?
Yes, but instead of being backlogged by several years, we'll be able to address cases as they come in. And so it won't require
So it'll just lower the backlog, not free up any staff or give you any more room to breathe particularly.
Right. I could be proven wrong this year once it's up and running, but that's my prediction.
Okay.
It'll help us focus on the more serious code enforcement cases.
Right.
So the lower level cases such as grass cutting and house painting can be deferred to the Violations Bureau, and we can pursue matters that may require a demolition order, etc.
And sorry, and how much? What will the flow of information be like from the MVB to Corporation Counsel, or how is the? I know we'll probably discuss this later as we get into the weeds of the as the MVB gets closer to be implemented. But I was just curious. Will you guys kind of be micromanaging, or will they just be reporting back to Corporation Counsel? Completely own entity, but how does information flows back and forth some way, right? Like.
So, Ken, do you have anything to offer on that? On this particular question, I'm going to plead the I've only been here 1 month answer.
Okay, sorry.
She said 29.
Do you have something, John?
I was just going to put out that the adjudication board is going to be under the finance department. It's going to work as a subsection of the finance department. Just to
Yeah.
In
Okay,
some
so
respects,
those-
it's set up like the current parking bureau, which did the same thing. It took parking ticket issues out of city court, placed it in this bureau with administrative law judges, and we act primarily as their collection agent.
Okay. That is a solid answer.
Joe answered that.
Okay, sorry. Cool, thank you. Just looking
Got
for
it.
a little clarity there.
Sure.
So, and I'm sure I'm making you repeat yourself here,
It's okay.
but so this year, I mean, realistically, we're not going to see much of a lighter workload for you folks over in Corporation Counsel. You're still going to deal with all the cases that you have already had open and still have to deal with those. But the hope is that, maybe the next coming year or so, you're going to maybe see a little bit lighter of a load, I guess, would be the hope with this Municipal Violations Bureau. I mean, you're going to still be dealing with all the real serious stuff, but or you're not even that optimistic?
No, I think that there's so much work to be done that in terms of the current staffing of 2 lawyers and 1 paralegal, even with, sure, it will be a lighter load in that they won't be maybe feeling the constant strain of pressure of, why is there such a backlog, right? So there'll be that. But, I mean, if you're asking, will we need fewer lawyers or paralegals, I don't see that being the case.
No, I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't go that far as to say that, we need to, take away lawyers from you because, the idea is that you are so backlogged because, you do have so few that are dealing with housing issues. I just, I guess my question would be, can we expect to see, I mean, obviously we're going to see quicker results, but the turnaround time, how much do you think, how much quicker do you think we might actually see some of these more serious issues addressed?
I mean, that's the key. I think that's is that instead of having to prioritize among hundreds of cases, which necessarily means that some of the cases don't get addressed for months, maybe years. The ones that are coming to us, those are all the important ones. Every case is important, but they're all the serious, complicated ones, the ones that have the greatest impact on the quality of life. And with this new arrangement, we'll have the ability to be on top of those, and so, and be more aggressive in our enforcement and just be overall more effective. So I guess it's not a question of a lighter workload, but a different workload and a more effective use of resources and, more results in more timely fashion. I do think it's going to increase. The one area where it will increase, which is a good thing because it leads to revenue, is collections. We'll have more judgments to collect on, and that's something that our office does do.
Maybe a similar question, slightly different, but yes, and I asked the Director of Code Enforcement for this yesterday, and maybe it's actually more appropriate to ask you, but in relation to the backlog, would you be willing to provide us with a description of what the backlog was the last couple of years and targets for how you anticipate the backlog to decrease over time? Or it may be difficult to do, but I think we all expect the backlog to fade away over time.
I do too, yep.
If we just have some type of target, I think that would be a good yardstick moving forward.
Yep, I will provide that to you.
Thank you.
I think it's important to point out, too, that of the 2 attorneys over there, one of them also serves as counsel to the Planning Commission and deals with zoning matters.
That's a lot.
So, and that's historically been how the workload's been divided up. But, so they're not able to, both of them, full-time focus on code enforcement.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yep, they're not full-time focused on that.
And they have items like emergency demolitions, other unexpected things that come up from time to time as well.
And with the staffing shortage that we've been discussing, in that area, that's an area where we lost someone and had only 1 lawyer for some time this past year, and a more junior lawyer. So we're you know, to the extent the numbers are high, we had a period where they were growing for that reason. But now we're back to 2 lawyers. That one more junior lawyer is gaining experience every day, and she's doing a great job. So all the indicators are pointed in the right direction.
Great.
We'll also be dealing with the rezone Syracuse transition too, and it's hard to say how time-consuming that would be from a legal point of view.
Currently, it shows, we're speaking 29, it says 24 in the budget, 27.
That is because we have 4 SIR employees and one that's actually not in our budget. She's in another department's budget, and she's funded entirely by a grant. So, good catch.
I'll ask one last one about the demos. They were city demos, not land bank demos, correct?
Yes.
So what did we spend in demo money last year, do we know?
We usually spend the full budget, about $500,000.
Okay.
Is the increase that goes from 25 last year to 30 this year to 45 next year for demolition cases? Do demolition cases, are they unique and similarly intensive in workload all the time, or is there some kind of efficiency gain from doing more of them? Or and is the increase just because of the demand for doing this type of thing, or is it that we're like reprioritizing in a different way?
Well, I can answer one part in terms of, is there a sort of an efficiency coming from greater numbers, and I'd say no. They're complicated cases. If you're going to demolish a piece of property, that's someone's property rights, and so you have to take, you know, very careful steps, and a lot of those steps in order to do that. So they're very complicated cases. In terms of the increase,
I'm happy that it increases, by the way. It seems necessary.
I think the demand is there unfortunately, because of some of the housing stock, and you know, we're here to support code enforcement if those numbers can be reached. But it probably depends on budgetary constraints, as not all demolitions cost the same amount of money. Depends on the building, especially if you get into a commercial building that can be more expensive.
Anybody else have any questions?
No. Good.
I'm good. Thank you for all of your help.
All right.
In answering. And
thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.